Hello, I am Manan and I am going to read Chapter 6, The Revolt of 1857. Over the period of 1757 to 1857, the political, social, economical, and religious policies followed by the British government in India had caused resentment and discontentment among the people in India. Several uprisings erupted in different parts of the country. Most of these uprisings were localized and were easily put down by the British. The wave of dissatisfaction against the British rule continued to simmer and finally culminated in the Revolt of 1857. The Revolt of 1857. The Great Rebellion of 1857 occurred as a result of a build-up of several factors over the decades, rather than one single event. Prior to it, there was a series of disturbances in different parts of the country from the late 18th century onwards. We can say that it was accumulation of resentment among the people of India which had been brewing up in their minds for a long time against the policies of the British in India. British historians call it a sepoy mutiny, but Indian historians term it as the First War of Independence. Causes of revolt. Political reasons. The expansionist policies of the British created panic among the Indian rulers and developed hatred towards them. The Indian rulers of the annexed states were forced to disband their army. These soldiers lost their livelihood as they could not get any employment elsewhere. In 1856, Governor General Canning decided that Bahadur Shah Zafar would be the last Mughal king, and after his death, none of his descendants would be recognized as kings. They would be just called princes. The Mughals would lose the title of emperor, and his successor would have to lead that fort. They even removed the name of Mughal king from the coins minted by the company. This made the Muslims rise in the revolt. Under the policy of doctrine of lapse introduced by Lord Dalhousie, the states of Chatra, Jhansi, Nagpur, etc. were annexed because the rulers of these states did not have a male heir. Nana Sahib, the adopted son of Peshwa Baji Rao II, was refused pension. Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi was not allowed to adopt a son. This caused great resentment among the rulers of India, who felt insecure. Most of the soldiers in the Bengal army were from Awadh. Annexation of Awadh on the pretext of misrule hurt the soldiers as it was seen an act of betrayal by the British. Second, economical reasons. British exploited the wealth and economic resources of India to serve the interest of British trade and industry. They converted India into a purely agricultural country and used India as the source of raw materials for its industries. They carried away India's wealth to Britain. The machine-made goods made in Britain flooded India. Trade and industry in India began to decline, rendering a large number of Asians jobless. Indians were denied all high civil and military positions, which were reserved for the British only. This caused frustration among educated Indians. The growing poverty, frequent famines added to the misery of the masses that joined the revolt. Economic exploitation of all classes of people brought them together to join the revolt. Third, social and religious causes. The British viewed Indians as racially inferior and culturally backward. They were arrogant and rude. For example, Indians were not allowed to travel in first-class compartments in trains. Educated Indians were denied opportunities of promotion as well as appointment to higher positions. The social and religious reforms laws passed by the British, such as the Anon Sati legislation of widow remarriage, introduction of Western education, etc., were considered as an interference with the customs and religious practices of Indians. The Christian missionaries began to convert many Hindus and Muslims to Christianity. Indians felt that their religion was in danger. In 1850, a new law was passed to make the conversion of Christianity easier. This law allowed an Indian who had converted to Christianity to inherit the property of his ancestors. Many Indians began to feel that the British were destroying their religion, their social customs, and their traditional way of living life. Salary paid to Indian sepoys was much lower than the British soldiers. This caused unrest among the sepoys in British army. There was a professional discontentment among the sepoys. Higher positions in the army were reserved for the British. The highest position to which an Indian soldier could rise was that of Subedar. A new law was passed that required the crews to travel overseas if required. This caused resentment in Hindu sepoys who believed that it was against their religion. Sepoys were not paid an extra allowance or bhatta for fighting in far-off places. Immediate cause. The rebellion actually started over a gun. Sepoys in the British Army were issued a new Enfield rifle, which was much powerful than the ones they had been using earlier. The final spark of the revolt was provided by the new cartridges that were issued to soldiers for the Enfield rifles. For loading a rifle, sepoys had to bite the cartridge and release the gunpowder. It was believed that the cartridges were greased with lard, pork fat, and tallow, cow fat. Pork fat was regarded unclean by Muslims. The use of cow fat angered Hindus as cows were sacred to them. It hurt the religious sentiments of both Hindus and Muslim soldiers in the British Army. This incident sparked the most dangerous uprising against British. Spread of revolt. The rumor about the grease cartridges soon spread everywhere. The first soldier to protest against this was Mangal Pandey, a Brahmin sepoy in Barakpur. On 29th March 1857, he refused to use the greased cartridges and killed two English officers. He asked other sepoys to join him and to end British rule. He was soon arrested and was hanged. The execution led to immunity of sepoys. In April 1857, they were sentenced to 10 years of jail for disobeying their officers. The response of other Indian soldiers in Meerut was quite extraordinary. On 10 May, the soldiers marched to jail in Meerut and released the imprisoned sepoys. They attacked and killed British officers. They captured guns and ammunition and set fire to the buildings and properties of the British and declared war of the Ferengis. The soldiers were determined to bring an end to their rule in the country. They marched to Delhi and proclaimed the old Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar as the Emperor of India. Centers of revolt. Delhi. The rebellions marched to Red Fort in Delhi and captured Delhi on 12th May 1857. and Bahadur Shah was declared the Emperor of India. The rebellions killed hundreds of British officers, men and women, and captured in public offices. The revolt in Delhi was led by General Bakt Khan. It soon spread to other centers like Kanpur, Lucknow, Jhansi, and Ballai. Kanpur. In Kanpur, the revolt was led by Nana Sahib, who declared himself as Peshwa and General and Governor of Bahadur Shah. His troops were led by Tantia Tope and Azimul. Tantia Tope was Nana Sahib's close associate and general during siege of Kanpur in 1857. Lucknow. The revolt in Lucknow was led by Hazrat Mahal, the Begum of Awadh, who took an active part in organizing the uprising against British. She had proclaimed her young son, British Quad, the Nawab of Awadh, against the British and against the wishes of the British. Jhansi. Rani Lakshmi Bai assumed the leadership of the community. After being defeated at Jhansi, she captured Gwalior with the help of Tantia Tope and Afghan guards. Ballai. Khan Bahadur Khan was the leader of the revolt in Ballai and proclaimed himself the Nawab. Allah and other places in Bihar. The revolt was led by Kunbar Singh. Indigo factories, which were the symbol of British repression, were destroyed by the rebels. Kunwar Singh died of war injuries. The other places of revolt were Baranas, Allahabad, Gwalior, Nasirabad, Indore, Aligarh, and Kota, where the sepoys killed the senior officers, plundered the treasury, and released the prisoners from jail. By June 1857, the entire North India was revolting. The Chapati movement. The Chapati movement first came to British attention early in February 1857. It consisted of the distribution of many thousands of chapatis that were passed from hand to hand and from village to village. No one knew for sure what they were for. Suppression of the revolt. The company decided to repress the revolt with all its might. Reinforcements brought from England. It was passed it passed new laws so that the rebels could be easily convinced. On 20 September 1857, the British forces regained Delhi as Bahadur Shah II was a weak leader. Delhi was recaptured from the rebel forces in September 1857. The last Mughal emperor, Bahadur Shah Zafar, was tried in court and sentenced to life imprisonment. His sons were shot dead before his eyes. He and his wife, Begum Zit Mahal, were deported and sent to prison in Rangoon, where he died in 1862. The people, however, continued to resist and battle the British. The British had to fight for 2 years to suppress the mass forces of popular rebel in Delhi. General Havelock defeated Nana Sahib and the rebels in Kanpur. Nana Sahib escaped Nepal. Lucknow was taken in March 1858. At Jhansi, Hudo suppressed the revolt and Rani Lakshmi Bai died on the battlefield in June 1857. Tantia Tope escaped to the jungles of central India and continued to fight a guerrilla war with the support of many tribal and peasant leaders. He was captured and tried and killed in April 1859. The defeat of rebel forces encouraged the decentrations. To win back the loyalty of the people, the British announced rewards for loyal landholders. The rebels were told that those people who had not killed any white people would remain safe if they surrendered. In spite of the promise, hundreds of sepoys, rebels, nawabs, and rajas were tried and hanged. Reasons of the failure of revolt of 1857. The revolt of 1857 failed because of the following reasons. The revolt was not widespread. It was confined to a few areas only. States like Bengal, Assam, Odisha, Rajasthan, parts of Punjab, and South India remained unaffected by the revolt. Lack of leadership and organization skills. The freedom fighters fought in independence groups and fought at different places. There was no central leadership to coordinate the movement and give it a direction. Bahadur Shah Zafar was a weak, old, and uninspiring leader. No common plan of action. The leaders who had joined the revolt because of the threat posed to their own throne or recapture their lost territories. They had no clear idea to what they wanted after throwing out the British. All sections of society did not support this revolt. Many rulers like Sikandars, Holkars, princely states like Patna, Nabha, etc. did not join the revolt against British. The emerging middle class did not support the rebels. The intellectuals, teachers, industrialists did not support the rebels. They genuinely believed that only the English can reform and modernize India. Some Indians even supported the suppression of the revolt. Sikhs, Rajput, and Gokra battalions in fact remained loyal to the British and helped them in suppressing the revolt. Lack of modern weapons and technology. The rebels lacked resources like modern weapons to face the well-equipped British army. While the British troops had guns and cannons, they were fighting with swords and spears. They also lacked communication facilities like telegraph. The revolt started before the fixed date. The revolt was supposed to start on 31st May 1857. Since it started before time, the whole plan was disorganized. The British, on the other hand, got sufficient time to mobilize their forces. British army was more disciplined. Though the leaders of the revolt were brave and patriotic, they were no match for the disciplined and experienced British generals. Lack of resources. Rebels lacked resources like men, money, and material, where the British Army had continuous supply of all of these resources. Results of the revolt. After 1857, the rule of East India Company ended. India was brought directly under the British Crown, Queen Victoria. The British government accepted direct responsibility for ruling India. A member of the British cabinet was appointed Secretary of State for India and made responsible for all matters related to the governance of India. He was given a council called the Indian Council to advise him. The Governor General of India was given the title of Viceroy, that is, a personal respective of the crown. The princely rulers were assured that their territory would never be annexed in future. They were allowed to pass on their kingdoms to their heirs, including adopted sons. The government thus tried to make them allies. However, they made they were made to acknowledgement the British Queen as the sovereign paramount. Army was reorganized to prevent revolts in future. proportion of India's soldiers in the army was reduced and the number of European soldiers was increased. All strategic positions were to be held by European troops. Artillery was in the hands of European troops only. Sikhs, Bhatas, and Gogras were declared martial races and were given preference in recruitment in army. People from Awadh, Bihar, and central India, the regions of the revolt, were called non-martial races and were not recruited in army. The British followed the policy of divide and rule. To divide Hindus and Muslims, they held Muslims responsible for the rebellion and treated them with suspicion and hospitality. The British decided not to interfere in the customs, religious beliefs and social practices of the people in India. To make zamadars and landlords their allies, policies were made to protect them and give them security of rights over their lands. Nature of the revolt. The revolt of 1857 has viewed differently by different historians. While the Indian historians call it a sepoy immunity or purely a military revolt, the Indian historians have evidence to prove that such a powerful and widespread revolt could not have all a sudden without the support of people. People from all walks of life supported the revolt. Therefore, they call it the first war of independence. Although group of historians believe that calling it the first war of independence will not be very accurate since India was not a nation in the modern sense of the word, as the loyalty of the people was in their respective states or rulers, nor was independence a real goal. So they call it the Great Rebellion of 1857. The revolt of 1857 was the first massive rebellion faced by the British after 100 years of their conquest. Though it started as a sepoy community beginning from Meerut, it was soon joined by a large number of people from different sections of society and threatened the very presence of the company in India. It regarded as the biggest armed resistance to colonization in the 19th century. The gave rise to feeling nationalism and inspired the people to long for independence from British rule. Thank you.